You should look at it. Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, you guys ready? All right, good evening. We're glad to have you here with us tonight and ask you to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the
Okay. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is recognition of our top ranking graduates from the Elko County School District high schools. And I see we have a few of them here with us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read them off. And if you're here, please stand and come and we're going to just shake your hand and say congratulations. So we'll start with Carlin High School, Natalie Brown. So congratulations to Natalie. We'll give her a hand. All right, Elko High School, Justice Siratek. Jackpot High School, Sincere Torrero. Owyhee High School, Siavi Melendez. All right, Spring Creek High School, Gage Kelly, come on up. Congratulations, Gage, and good luck.
Well done. Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks. Congrats. Thank you.
All right, and as Gage is going back to his seat, I got to hear him speak at graduation. He did incredible. So Gage, good luck. We know you're headed off out of the country and you're going to do amazing things. So best of luck and congratulations again. All right, Wells High School, we have Jory Wright and Marlene Slater. Nice job, Jory. Thanks.
Well
Good
done.
job, Marlene.
Good job. Well done.
Congratulations. All right, and I won't tout their individual accomplishments, but I know you guys have done awesome things. I got to see Jory pole vault, but Marlene, I didn't get to see you pole vault, but I know you've done amazing things too. So congratulations again to the two of you. And we know you're going to go off and do fantastic things as well. So best of luck to you. West Wendover High School, we have Riker Carter. All right, I'm just going to give the board an opportunity to comment really quickly on congratulations to you before we move on. Comments from the board?
Well done. Continue to keep that academic prowess as you move forward, whether it's in additional higher education or just the way you approach your career as well. I know it takes a lot to be able to get there. So I hope that you continue to show that dedication and we'll be much better as a society for it.
I just want to say congratulations, and I'm just always amazed at the quality of students that we have in our district, and you guys are very impressive and are great students.
All right, any other comments from the board?
Congratulations. Go on and do great things.
I don't want to be left out, but I don't know what else to say other than, hey guys, you did great. Keep it up. go out and show the world what Elko County can do, and keep doing what you're doing.
Congratulations, and just keep going, and you're doing a really good job already. So I'm sure you're gonna do great.
Right, and we're, again, just, it's awesome to have those of you who could be here with us here. We know you've already, had opportunities to be celebrated, but continue on, do amazing things. And we'd love to hear a report back in a few years when you come back to visit. So anyway, we'll give you another round of applause, and then you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to go. We know you've got lots of things on your mind as you're starting this next chapter of your life. So congratulations again. All right, we'll go to item 1.5, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. This is a non-action item. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? Lynn, go ahead and push the button on the mic. It should show green.
It's green.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lynn Hoffman. We just want to say thank you for recognizing those students. It's kind of at least partly what school is about, the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic. And thank you. We left the city meeting early and missed out on the end of the pool pack presentation, but we may stay here and get to hear it again. One more thing, Teresa. I want to congratulate you on your daughter and the fact that she received one of our Republican $500 or $1,000 scholarships for her essay. And I haven't heard it yet, but we've heard it was excellent, and congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you to you and all of those who provide scholarships for Elko County students. It's awesome to have local scholarships to go to students who are, planning big things in their life. So thank you. We appreciate that. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 2.1, receipt, review, and possible acceptance of a renewal proposal from the Nevada Public Agency Insurance Pool, and approval for payment from fiscal year 23-24 funds. This is for possible action. All right,
Thank you.
Welcome, Alan.
Thank you so much. I too left the city of Elko meeting early, so I have no idea what they ended up doing. If we could queue up, there was a PowerPoint presentation, Cassie. Yeah. It's awesome to recognize excellence, and you recognize your top scholars, but during graduation, you recognize all of those awesome students, at the various schools that achieve that level of recognition and ready to go next. And, it's amazing. I love going to graduations. I'm weird. Okay. I'm killing time while she runs a presentation up. I love going to graduations, whether it be college, high school, college, in recognition of excellence, because people work very hard at what they do. And, your employees here at the school district work very hard. And one of the programs that we offer at Pool Pack school safety, and the fact that I walked through at the open gate just made me smile, because I knew my cell phone wasn't going to set it off, or my keys and that type of thing, because school safety has become something that's real important. So for the record, Alan Kalt, I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Pool Pack. Oh, thank you so much. I want to thank you for your participation in this program, your owners. You as a member, you're the center of everything we do. And am I the one that runs?
Yep.
Okay. That's scary. I'm going to see if I can do it with there we go. We are Pool Pack. Emphasis is the word we, okay? You folks are equity owners. Pool Pool is a member service consortium made up of cities, counties, school districts, hospitals, and GIDs throughout the great state of Nevada. Okay, we own it. It's member owned, member governed. Okay, the members decide those types of things that we need to do. Okay, when there was a school safety crisis and an issue, we hired a national consultant, Jeff Kay with Safe Schools, to develop hazardous vulnerabilities assessments for every school district, make sure these kids are safe. During one of his conferences that a lot of folks attended, there was a vendor there with OpenGate. And I reached out to a funding source, tried to get grant funding for our member school districts through the William N. Pennington Foundation to see if we get open gates. We applied for an application. I did 5 school districts. Elko was one. Elko, Churchill, Douglas, Mineral. Can't remember the fifth one. We were unsuccessful, but it's a great program. And we did a test pilot project in Douglas County. I'm glad to see you have that for school safety. But that's one of the things that the members brought up, superintendents have talked about is, hey, we got a problem with school safety. And the members coming to us with challenges and coming to us with solutions. That's what we're all about, and helping each other. We collaborate. We don't compete. You don't compete against Carson City School District. If you're doing something awesome that can help Carson City, you're going to share that with them. Vice versa, they're going to share their expertise with you as well. We try to meet the needs, the service needs of our members. Again, you telling us, and one of those things, school safety. School safety is huge. We provide risk management, cybersecurity, health and wellness, e-learning platform, HR programs. I'm going to highlight some of those rather quickly. Okay. But clearly keeping schools safe is very important. I talked about Safe Schools Operation Inc. Jeff Kay, retired Sparks police officer, was there on the Sparks shooting many years ago on that school district. He has dedicated the remainder of his professional career towards school safety, and we've embraced him. You guys have had your hazardous vulnerabilities done, developed emergency operations plans. You've done testing of those plans, those type of things. And we provide training, to you. Through his organization, provides grant assistance, that justification for the DOJ grants and the different granting agencies to help school districts get funding to help support the schools. 3 sessions ago, the legislature put capital money aside for school districts for a school hardening because of the violence in schools. Our members were eligible and received funding, okay? Because Jeff had those, he had worked with your folks, had those plans in place. The amount of funding that went to Clark County and Washington County was 0 for round 1 and round 2. Our members got over $3 million of state funding for that. And again, that's one of those dividends we invested in school safety, and the state was able, the sad news was they ran out of funding, COVID hit, but there's a lot of opportunities out there. Jeff hosts the International School Safety Conference, and I'm glad that we've had representatives from Elko County School District over the years attend that conference. The next area is cybersecurity. We have Tony Rucci, one of the national cybersecurity experts. So if we have a cyber issue, he's on our team. He has completed a passive network assessment out here in Elko County School District. Okay, you guys have incidents response plan, critical incidents response plans. If you were to be hacked, we have had 2 school district members systems been hacked and penetrated, and we were able to get those systems up and running. Okay. And we provide that training and that expertise and that tabletop with your employees. And we appreciate the fact that your employees participate. Today, there was a conference call. We have a quarterly IT where all the IT people get on a conference call with Tony quarterly, and they talk about the issues, challenges, and those trends that are happening right now. Okay. And I try to listen to as many of them as I can. I was on the road actually coming out here, wasn't able to participate, but those IT people speak a different language. But I, as a CPA, I can sometimes, I teach a different language, talk a different language. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, if you got time, 8:30 to 2:30, I'm going to be at the Elko Police Department providing 6 hours local government finance training. And the good news is some of your finance folks are participating. We got, again, one of those services, training people, helping entities do the best. Policy development. You guys have no before, for not have phishing campaigns so that people don't have clickbait where they, could be compromised on the cyber side. Next is e-learning. And this is an area that a lot of school districts have really embraced. We use the Absorb Learning Platform, over 350. Thanks, Dane's here, so all the real tough questions. Now we have the subject matter expert here to help. Over 350 courses for your folks, whether it be, the lunchroom folks, the schools, that type of things. There's classes. We've developed custom classes, for different types of areas. There's special classes related just to education. Okay. And we appreciate the fact that many school districts embrace e-learning. You can create your own e-learning. You adopt a new policy. You want to create an e-learning. We'll work with you to make that happen. We have an e-learning master, Mike Van Houten. It's just incredible what he has done with our e-learning program and using actually some AI in developing some of the coursework. And it's really cool. And to see people embrace that and take advantage of it is so important. Another area that I like to talk about real briefly is human resources, from hiring to, recruitment, from hiring to firing, discipline, and retiring. We have HR business consultant that is dedicated to work with you. Have two guys with school specific HR, okay, that serve our school members, dedicated to your needs. They were HR directors at their respective school districts. They do on-site assessments, training, certificate programs. They have webinars as well, do HR briefings, legislative updates. Okay. So here's where the rubber meets the road, and I'll start, and Dane can jump in and finish. Good news, bad news. The good news is that we were able to get full total coverage. Okay. There was only slight adjustment in the cyber coverage. Okay. Downward from 3 million to 1 million. Okay. With an aggregated total of all members, I think it was 10 million or 15. Back to that. Anyway, 15 million on the aggregate. We were able to fill out all the levels of coverage. The pool overall increase was 14%. It's a hard market. There's problems with capacity. Okay. And on property, there's a big problem. It's a big problem on property was an issue. Cyber was an issue, and law enforcement. Law enforcement's not directly an issue with you because your school resource officers, are assigned to another local government. They're covered through them. But what we're seeing, just like your house value has went up, okay, and just like if you've tried to get somebody to, fix or add an addition or do something at your house, it's very difficult to get those people. And your total insured value has went up 18%. So the school district's total assets of property went from $484 million to $571 million. Okay, a increase of 18%. So if you add 18% plus 14, was not valedictorian of my class, but I was salutatorian, so I'll hopefully get it right. You're talking 32%, but your rate increase is only 23.5%. Your school enrollment, your average daily attendance, that's a key marker in allocation of the costs related to school liability. That went up 9.65%. So, I'm shocked. If I was a board member, I'd be shocked. Oh my gosh, that's one of the highest increases ever. Absolutely, you're correct. 23.5%. Very high. It's the market. It's reflecting what's going on. So we've had entities go out to bid. In the past, we had Douglas County School District go out. We've had our city school district go out, and they've retained and stayed with the pool. But what's really interesting this year, because of the hard market and not entities having struggles, we had got a new member joined on board. City Sparks joined us for property because their property increase was going to be 38% increase. And our rate was lower than what their expiring rate was. So we have value in our pricing, value in our member services. And, we believe that the pool is a good value proposition for the members, helping the members, doing what we can to keep the costs down. So we looked at the overall budget on the pool side. Our admin cost is 4.5%. We're nonprofit. We're not paying shareholders and stockholders, any dividends. We're paying you service dividends through the IT support, school safety, e-learning, HR support, health and wellness, mental health, those type of things. That's what we're doing for you. 76% of what you pay us goes out to pay for insurance costs and claims. Okay. 4.7%, that information's in your packet, goes in the admin cost. Member services, that service dividend is over 8%. So those are the key components of the program. I thank you for educating the kids and, and I apologize for being late, but it warmed my heart that you were recognizing outstanding students. And I know you recognize all your students as outstanding, those who graduated. And, we believe that we offer a great program through your involvement, your leadership, your participation. So that's my formal presentation. And Dane, thanks for being here. You can fill in any of the blanks. I didn't talk about deductible options or anything like that.
All right. Hopefully Alan told you all I was over at the city and I didn't just wake up from a nap and was running late.
I snuck out.
Okay. A few things I want to touch on here. Okay, so
We had different slides from the city.
okay. So did Alan talk about the risk services and the pools, really a risk management company that also provides insurance at all?
Go ahead and give us a little more on that.
Okay, so is that slide going to be in the back of your packet here? So the pool offers a ton of services they have an EAP program, an employee assistance program, which is huge, especially post-COVID where mental health is such an issue. That's there available. They have resources, they have training, this page here, and there's so much more e-learning, board trainings, a lot of that you guys are obtaining through the pool. Historically, this entity has not utilized that to its maximum potential, but Julie has kind of spearheaded that, and we're going from a low user to a high user, getting everybody involved. That's going to help immensely. And that's all free as part of your pool membership. Everything is built into this pool membership cost. There's no extra. So there's also grants that Julie's been utilizing, educational and risk management. So we pretty much need to continue to wring that sponge and get every last dollar worth out of it. So we are on the right track there. The e-learning. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I buzzed through the whole thing.
Okay, and this is great being here in Elko where you can take these courses. You're not driving to Reno, for a 2-day, paying for hotels. You can hop on, do a half-hour e-learning course. You're done, on with your day. Okay, on these rate increases. So part of the pool property is the new auditorium over there, but then also every 4 years, Asset Works does an appraisal on all the property, and it's insured to 100%. Okay, so that's the value. It acts as a co-insurance, so it's accurate. That's part of being in the pool, but it's insured to its full value. Where sometimes in the private insurance market, you have to insure it to at least 80%. But that's a benefit of the pool, is it's 100%. It's insured, and the pool also provides a student accident policy. Was that in here too?
That's not in there, but yes, we do. We provide that to the membership, no additional cost to the parents. If I can share a success story, there was, one of the members of one of the districts was on a playground, had a significant compound fracture, fell off a piece of playground equipment. They had to pay the family. They were uninsured. Okay, the family couldn't afford insurance. They had I think it was $250 deductible, coverage up to $25,000. They negotiated with the local hospital provider, and basically they were able to pay their $250. It was like $40,000. A hospital wrote off the rest, and basically provided $25,000 of coverage for an underserved, low to moderate income population who folks could maybe not afford to buy that. Okay, we buy it for all our school kids that are covered in the pool. Okay, and that dollar amount is it's like under $5 per person that we pay. And for that family, that $5 that you invested in every child here in Elko County, if that was it was not an Elko school kid, but if it was, they benefited by $25,000 and not creating a financial hardship on that family. I mean, the $250 was probably a hardship Okay. But that's a lot less than 25,000 or the 40,000 if they had to fight with the hospital, if the hospital went after everything. So that student accident is huge. Not all pools across the nation provide that. So it's an a la carte program and other programs, but we feel it's important. Okay. And it also applies to the star quarterback. Yeah, the star quarterback, if he gets hurt, or, let's say on the freshman team, a kid gets hurt. Okay. If they have regular insurance, that goes first, but if they're uninsured, okay, then this coverage is provided. And it allows the underserved, the low to moderate income folks to participate. And it provides transportation to and from your events, okay, coverage as well for the students at no additional cost to the family or to the school district other than that $250 deductible. And that's a program I'm kind of proud of because there's been a couple of great success stories. And kids, athletes can now play where before, if they used to have to buy their own policy and families couldn't do. So, yep, power of the pool. And that was a recommendation by one of our Northern Nevada school districts, recommended that program to us. And we did that starting, I think, like 8 or 9 years ago.
Student accident is huge. I've tried to help on a few more complex claims. I kind of run into a wall due to HIPAA, but I've seen it is being utilized in this district a lot, whether it's on a athletic adventure or a kid gets hurt on the playground, it's going in. So it's a pretty good thing. As far as deductibles go, so about 7 years ago, the school district had a $25,000 deductible and we changed it to $10,000. And that's where it's been ever since. This year, I obtained a $25,000 deductible renewal option in the hopes of potentially seeing how much money we could save on that. It would be my recommendation for an entity this size to increase the deductible to $25,000. I believe Julie's concurs. You would have to have, I think it was 9 claims to make up that difference, where I take the cost savings up front. You're working on the risk management side. Overall, I think, knock on wood, we'll come out ahead by increasing the deductible.
I promise, not too many questions on this one.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Julie, thank you, Madam Chair, if I may, I apologize. Thank you. Julie, do you know off the top of your head how many deductible claims we've had, not counting the student ones, but the maintenance deductibles that we had for the past 12 months? Or Dane, if you, because I was doing some rough calculations too.
I did not bring that paperwork with me, but it broke out pretty much the same. It told the same story. Having the COVID year kind of messes things up because you have nothing happened. Thankfully, no property claims because it was prime for property claims, with nobody around. But it seems like pretty much $100,000 savings from a claim standpoint and just a true dollar figure standpoint.
I agree. I think we only had a couple over the $10,000, but I'll have to look it up for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So the pool claim, third-party administrator provides claim runs every quarter to the district, and it lists out the claims, and it goes back to your inception involvement in the program. And that's things I know that Dane has, over time has worked with the entity, looking at and evaluating the claims, what's causing them, what we could do, and is there a pool service that could be used to help reduce frequency and or severity of that. And one of the things, it's an ugly situation, but we see it in school districts is sexual abuse and molestation. Okay. And, we have model policies, we have attorneys on staff. And last year when I sat down with the actuary, he said, actuarially speaking, we have $1 million claim in the school district of the great state of Nevada every 18 months. That's unacceptable. We've got to do better. And our HR team's been working hard to do better on that. We have an HR leadership conference. That's been a topic. We provide the training, we provide the e-learning, but that's an area when, that's a high severity type of claim that could happen. But more importantly, it's a violation of a child. whether it's a special needs child, a regular child, or, whatever it is. But those are the types of things that we got to develop programs in place. That's an issue that can be addressed. Fraud, waste, and abuse in fraud detection and prevention is another area that good programming can be in place to reduce the frequency and the severity of those types of things. And those are things that members have brought to us that we look at on the claims of, well, how can we do better? And again, like I said, tomorrow, doing a fraud detection and prevention class, as well as local government. So, and you folks are greatly participating in those things, and we appreciate that.
All right. Other questions from the board?
Madam Chair, move to approve the acceptance of the renewal proposal from the Nevada Pool Agency Insurance Pool at the deductible rate of $25,000 and approve payment from fiscal year 2023, 2024 funds.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries.
Thank you,
All
gentlemen.
right, thanks,
you all.
Dane.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Alan.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll go ahead and move to item 2.2, receipt, review, and possible permission to apply for FY24 grants. This is for possible action.
As Cassie's making her way up, Madam Chair, if I recall correctly, we did something almost identically just a few months ago, it seems. Is that correct?
I say we do talk about grants quite often, but let's.
Maybe it was a year ago?
It was a year ago.
Okay.
It was actually over a year. I usually try
Time
to do it
flies
in
when we're having
April
fun.
and yeah, I looked back and I did not do it in April. So that's why it's on this month's
Yeah.
agenda.
But Cassie has talked to us about grants fairly recently, and she does an amazing job. So Cassie, take it over. It's good.
This is, I believe it's policy, but it's just an annual, just formal request that when I apply for grants, that the directors have the authorization to sign off on them, as well as myself and Julie. So I'm able to freely seek funding for the district without having to go to the board for each single application.
Cassie, has there been any change since last year's presentation?
No. Usually if I do come up and have a formal request, it's because it's required within the notification of funding opportunity. And I have to have proof that I've spoke to the board.
All right, any other questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, move to grant permission to apply for fiscal year 2024 grants as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, I'll just say, Cassie, thank you for your hard work, for all you do to get grants in our district. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.3 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the dual credit course list for school year 23-24. This is for possible action. Discussion or questions from the board on this?
Can the board hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, CJ.
Awesome. Just checking. So this is another one of those yearly things. The document you have in front of you and that's attached to this agenda item is indicative of new dual credit courses that we would like to teach this year. It's not inclusive of every possible option. Once those are approved, we don't bring them back again for approval. But in order to, I think by the end of this month, we have to have our proposed new classes for dual credit submitted to the state. Actually, yeah, it's sooner than the end of this month, but those are the courses we'd like to submit to the state. And Paul Allen, I don't know if he's on Zoom right now or not, but those are the courses that we're ready to go with, and we just need your approval so we can get the approval from the state and then offer those to our students next year.
All right, any questions from the board on that?
CJ, I see there are two courses here, Mine 101, 102, as well as MET 101, 102. Specifically, those are mining engineering 1 and 2, metallurgical engineering 1 and 2. Are those intended to be taken in one semester in order for both to qualify for the half credit? Or is this intended to be a full year course for one of our high school students?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Matt, they get a half credit for the entire year. So it's not like English 101 and 102 where you get a half credit for each one of those and you end up with a full credit. These are courses that have longer or shorter. No, it's the other way. It's shorter hour requirements, and so the timing works out because of when they can offer them and how many hours a week a student's able to be in there. It ends up being that they get a half credit over the course of the year is how I remember it being explained to me.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Are the classes available to every student at every campus?
I believe I'd have to rain check you on that question, Susan. I know that the courses are offered in conjunction with the Mining Center for Excellence that they're putting together over there. I'm not sure if every student from every campus has capability to tune into those or not. If they were able to be there physically, but that's pretty tough for the outlying areas. So I'd have to follow up with GBC on if they have planned for that capability or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, what's the will of the board?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the dual credit course list for school year 2023, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.4 is receipt, review, and possible approval of school resource officer cooperative agreement.
All right, I'll jump in here with that one
Go ahead.
too.
Yep.
So we've got a school resource officer program that has been growing over the last number of years, and I think over the COVID time, the previous MOU lapsed, which meant that it reverted to another year of the same agreement as before. So over the last about 5 to 6 months, the school district, the Elko County, and the Elko City organizations have been working together to kind of update this. There was no substantial change, no like real changes to how the school resource officers are financed. That's all pretty much the same. There was a little bit of change to not hierarchy, but like reporting structures, both like who they report to, as well as how law enforcement reports are filed. So there's a little bit of change there to make sure we're kind of communicating well, I guess, is the best way to summarize that. And all three entities came to an agreement that you have before you. I'd be happy to answer if you have any specific questions. I don't have because I'm driving and talking to you, I don't have the document pulled up in front of me, but if you have a question about something specific and you want to read it, I can try to speak to that language.
All right, any questions from the board?
I have a question on, it's actually on page 5 and 6, it's number 7, but I know, Mr. Anderson, you can't see that. But just for me, it talks about holding things at school, like helping with truancy, helping with gangs, helping with bullying, etc. And so my question was, who's responsible to check on those things? And is there a report or something quarterly? And an example would be some data. So how many trainings and assemblies and on what topics are our SROs having at each school? And then is there a way to track, are they helping with our truancies, with the bullying? And I'm not saying everything needs to be on them, but how are we tracking that that's working?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Susan, and I do, well, I can't recite all the things on page 5 and 6, but I know what you're talking about. I checked them out a little earlier today, and I followed up with Anna about Anna Bribieska, Sergeant Bribieska, about which of those things maybe they report on and track, and it sounds like a good portion of it is tracked and reported on, just not kind of in board meeting fashion. She mentioned to me, and this was a good point, that some of our SRO funding has come from grant funds in one form or fashion, and because that happens, she tracks a lot of their engagement with and submits data on some of those things to Cassie for those reporting purposes. But not everything. Like I don't think they keep track of a number of assemblies or that sort of thing. So when I discussed that with her today, she indicated that it wouldn't be difficult necessarily to track those things, but it's probably worth doing if they're mentioned individually and lined out in the MOU. As far as if those things are working or not, I mean, we can draw conclusions. We can say there's correlation. I think it'd be hard to say it's causation, but certainly there could be correlation to X number of I don't know, like drug and vaping presentations have led to a reduced amount of suspensions or logged behavior incidents of that type. There would be a way to do that. And you could say the same about bullying, I suppose. But I think it probably does start, as you're saying, with tracking those things. And so I think Anna intends on doing that going into next year.
Okay, something that might be, I'm not sure if easier is the right word, but tracking truancy might be a little easier to track than, say, bullying, maybe. I don't know. And I don't know if tracking is the right word, but I would, I don't know how the rest feel, but I think that would be a good idea just because, they are working with our kids. So it'd be interesting to know what's working and what's not. And I would appreciate even a quarterly report on what's happening would be nice too.
Yeah, we did talk about truancy a little bit as well. It's obviously a pretty important topic. Attendance affects achievement. And I do know that the amount to which we incorporate SRO involvement with truancies is pretty much limited to the delivery of truancy notices. Most of the other stuff that has to do with truancy is a school administrator led effort where they make contact, they do the daily efforts, they call home to see where the kid is. There's a lot of kind of boots on the ground work from school administration, and as we try to do with many things, we try not to involve law enforcement unless it's something that has become something that law enforcement needs to be involved with. If we don't involve them until it's criminal, until it's a violation of a certain statute, that sort of thing. So I guess I'd want to talk to Anna a little bit about I wonder how much there is to track about what they're doing, because I think their involvement is pretty limited to now it's their turn to drop something off. And then from there, it's actually totally out of their control and our control, because once a notice is dropped off about truancy, then it becomes the will of what the truancy court does and how JDC handles that. And that's subject to how they choose to handle things once it's turned over to them.
Okay, thank you for explaining that because I didn't know that's the way it works. So that helps.
And I will just say this, I know it's, it's hard to say a child isn't truant one reason or another, or is, well, it is, if they are, we can say, yeah, they're truant. We have data on that. But I dare say, excuse me, the relationships our SROs build with students help keep kids in school. CJ was saying, they don't want to involve, law enforcement unless it, becomes something that is a legal issue. But I know our SROs build important relationships with kids, and those relationships we can't track with data, but they are someone that a kid learns to trust and they can come to them. And we can't track that, but we know that happens. We know having those SROs in the school make a big difference, and having them in schools where kids recognize them every day. They know them, they've seen them, they've been part of presentations. They, give them a fist bump at the front door every morning or whatever. That's something we can't track, but I know that's a huge impact on our kids when they've got great SROs that are there, that are involved and that care about the kids. And I know we have really fantastic SROs that do that.
Yeah,
Right. Good.
great, Madam Chair. Well, yeah, well said. And then just since it's not relevant to the MOU per se, but on the topic of truancy and just attendance, I know this was a very relevant topic when we made the decision to move to 4-day, and a huge kind of argument on behalf of moving to 4-day was it would reduce the amount of times kids are out of school and out of class. That was a motivation for lots of people. So I assure you, we will be tracking very closely how attendance either gets better, maintains, or gets worse, because I think that'll be a key factor of how we determine the effectiveness of the 4-day model.
Thank you. Any other questions on the agreement from the board?
CJ, this is Matt. This is minor in the grand scheme of things, but Article 13 just says deliberately omitted. Is there a reason we didn't just omit it and change 14 to 13 and subsequently change the rest of the article numbers? That you're aware of?
I don't have an answer for you on that, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was because they didn't want the number 13.
Oh, it's unlucky. Let's get that out. I don't know.
No reason that I see to not approve this. I just was curious. It just looked a little interesting.
It's like a hotel where they don't have a 13th floor, so I thought maybe
Right.
they don't want a 13. I don't know.
All right. I know there was a little bit of concern just because the city and the county do operate differently. And it sounds like, kind of reading through this, it looks like they were able to come to better terms on how that's going to be handled. Would you agree, CJ, that they were able to come to agreement on those differences in how they have to operate and be able to operate well as, I guess, one entity as SROs, even though they report differently and the way they handle things a little bit differently? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. And my answer to you would be yes, ma'am. We made sure that, so from our standpoint, the most important thing is that the SROs are able to function and do well the things that when you talked about the value of SROs, right? And how they're there for the kids, the positive impact they have on our schools. So that is our concern, is that those things are, that a structure and a system is in place so that they're able to be effective at what they do. Any concerns from their end about who reports to who and all of that, we made sure that they, we didn't input a whole lot into that. We allowed them and their kind of people from the county and city level to make sure that everything was acceptable to them. So I didn't probe too much, just when they came up with language that suited them, I figured that was good enough for them.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions before we ask for a motion? All right, is there a motion from the board?
I move to approve the 2023 SRO agreement.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.5 is receipt, review, and possible permission to go out to bid for the asphalt repairs at Adobe Middle School and Sage Elementary. Welcome, Stephen.
How's it going, everybody?
Fantastic.
Yeah, so we've got some major asphalt repairs this year, and those are two of the schools that both have high traffic areas in those areas where we saw the asphalt degrade this winter. And we'd like to go out to bid and solicit to see if we can find somebody to help repair them.
All right, any questions from the board?
I noticed during graduation at Spring Creek High School that the entrance has been patched. Is that a patch or is that a?
That's a temporary repair.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I guess on another topic, that one will be coming to you soon.
Okay, that was the next question. Thank you.
And that's why it's not in here.
All right, any other questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, move to allow Stephen and his team to go out to bid for the asphalt repairs at Adobe Middle School and Sage Elementary.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. All right, item 2.6 is receipt, review, and possible approval to solicit bids for the annual asphalt sealing and striping schedule for FY24.
This is on that same schedule that you presented last
Presented
year.
and was moved to a 4-year rotation instead of the 3. So we've got about 2.3 million square feet of asphalt to take care of. So this is, you know, some years may be a little bit higher than others. That's just indicative of the geographical area and us having to pay a contractor to be in one location versus 200 miles away. So that model is just kind of surrounded on this. But this would be a pretty close estimate as to what most of them will cost on a 4-year rotation at the asphalt prices right now.
The transportation center that's listed in here along with the other school locations, is that the one on Status Way, the bus yards? Okay. Any chance we're going to come under the 400,000 significantly enough to maybe have a change order to throw another school or small lot in there?
There could be a potential for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely, I don't want to tell you, but I shoot a little bit high just to make myself look good. But when I come in low, so no, but I think that's a great idea.
If there is savings, would you need to come back to the board to request that be added to the bid? Or is there a way that we can phrase this to allow you the discretion to do that if we're under a specific dollar amount? And I'm kind of looking at Julie as well to make sure she doesn't have a problem with that, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Okay.
I have a quick question. What does this come out of? A budget, capital improvement, or
Pay as you go.
as you go? I'm of the opposite, thinking that if it comes in under, save the money.
The one good thing about approving something like this, especially with pay as you go money, it's for improving or repairing, you know, our school grounds, whether we're building something new or we're trying to preserve that. And that's essentially what this is. And I'm sure most of you guys know, but I like to hear myself speak. So us, by doing this, it'll just get us further along down the future. So this isn't something that's kind of like putting a jewel on the school. It's helping us save money in the future.
Just to clarify, Brooke, you weren't saying don't do any asphalt at all. You were saying if there's a savings, keep the savings, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm going to throw in something too, and I don't know if he was kidding when he told me, but Jeff Durham, who isn't able to be at the meeting tonight, he did tell me to go ahead and let you know that he still thinks asphalt repair is too expensive. So I'm
Thanks, Jeff.
But I'm making sure I relay his message in case he really did want that relayed.
That sounds like he would have wanted that relayed.
I agree.
So before I make a motion, Madam Chair, if I may, my thought process, and Brooke, I understand where you're coming from, of let's save that money. What we're spending this year is almost assuredly going to be less than what we're spending next year, only because costs never seem to go down. And that was why I was thinking a savings of 30,000 this year is going to get us further than if we save that, bank it, and then spend that $30,000 next year on asphalt. So that's why I was thinking that. And that was the direction I was going. Obviously, our pay-as-you-go funds, we need to hold on to as much as we can. $30,000, just unfortunately, or whatever the amount may be. If we're looking at a total estimate of 400,000, 10% of that is not going to go very far. And that was what my thought process was. So just to give that out a little bit so that when I float this proposal, if it dies for lack of a second, then great, we can move forward. But if it does move forward, that was what my thought process was. So Madam Chair, if I may, move to approve the request to solicit bids for the annual asphalt sealing and striping schedule for FY24 with a maximum amount of $400,000 to give the facilities team leeway to add additional projects if the cost so warrants.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
How do you do that if he picks another school, then that wasn't on a public agenda? I don't get how that works.
And that was kind of why I was trying to look at Julie to make sure I wasn't going too far out on that side. The bid is to do, or the request is to go out to bid for these projects with a dollar amount. And so if there was the ability to have savings where the project is, I don't believe would need to be through an open meeting, because we are discussing that ability and giving that leeway, that authority to the facilities team to be able to move forward. I don't know that it has to be listed out on each project. I think he lists out the projects so that, and correct me if I'm wrong, just so that we know where he's going. And then on that 4-year rotation, we can kind of keep track of that.
You need to put what you're approving in the motion. So if you say you're approving the asphalt project with facilities choosing what schools to do and how to do it, then that needs to be in your motion. If you want specific schools, it just needs to be in your motion.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think how the public thinks if we're.
I think, sorry
I'm
to
just trying to wrap
interject,
my-
and I don't want to facilitate your decision one way or another, but we're on a 4-year rotation. And I think by adding schools into this year, it'll ruin that rotation.
Okay.
So, but I do like your idea, and yeah, costs seem to never go down. But by adding those in, potentially I might come back to you for more repairs, and we can use that, 50% that I saved this year for that.
And
Would that be okay?
my thoughts are that that fund isn't getting any more money put into it right now. And so everything that we can save in that fund is better, because just like asphalt is going to go up in cost, so will anything else that we need to repair or fix in the schools. So if it be HVAC or whatever, the cost of everything is going to go up, and to have, whether it's $30,000 or $100,000 still in that fund for where the need needs to be, since these schools are on this 4-year rotation, then save the money, keep it in the bank account.
Call for a vote.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. All right. Any opposed? Nay.
Nay. Madam Chair, move to approve the request to solicit bids for the annual asphalt sealing and striping schedule for FY24, including the schools and facilities as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Chair votes aye, and that motion carries.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Item 2.7 is a presentation and discussion of the proposed board goals. This is a non-action item. Just as a little bit of background, the board met in open meeting twice to talk about some goals, and I'm going to invite board members, if a couple of them will read the goals, and then if there's anything you would like to share about that discussion. As you see, this is a non-action item, so we will just be basically doing this as a first reading. And we would certainly invite the public to share with us your thoughts on the goals. We only chose 2, with the possibility, of course, to add another goal as the year goes on, and knowing that we are starting into a new 4-year calendar for most of our schools at this point. We thought it might be good to leave that third option open until we see how things are going. Would anyone like to read goal 1 for me?
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to read that.
Thank you.
Goal number 1, increase the percentage of 2nd and 3rd grade students who are projected to be proficient or advanced on the SBAC Language Arts Literacy Assessment by 3% each year for the next 3 years as measured by the spring MAP Growth Reading Assessment. 2023-2024 would move from 32% to 35%, the following year from 35% to 38%, and the 2025-2026 year would run from 38% to 41%. For reference, SBAC is the Smarter Balanced Assessment System, and MAP is Measures of Academic Progress.
All right. Would anyone like to share any thoughts on that goal?
I would.
Go ahead,
If no
Susan.
one else
Yeah.
wants to. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it one more time. We're measuring with the map, which is fine. So I have a compromise maybe, because I wanted it to be the SBAC, not the map. I looked at the on the Nevada website. Map reading is a formative assessment, whereas the SBAC is summative. So what I would propose, let me get my proposal. Both of these are required by the state. So if we don't have it in our goals, I was thinking, could we at least look at, we're projecting proficiency with map testing. So could we, instead of having it in our goal, then could we do either Superintendent Anderson or Director Smith, say like SBAC doesn't come back till July or August, somewhere in there, I think. Could we have them look at that maybe in September sometime and just do a comparison of the spring 2023 projected proficiency, which would be the map testing, and then what's the actual proficiency, which would be the SBAC, and give us a report, because there, to me, we wouldn't want a difference more than about 1%, because then I think we need to reevaluate. Maybe it's not in our goal, but could we look at that? Because I still think it's important to look at not just your projected proficiency, but what was their proficiency. So I was trying to come up with a compromise, because I know sometimes I charge in like a bull in a china shop. So, because I know you guys you wanted to go with map testing. So would that be a compromise I could make?
Well, I think if we're going to have, go ahead.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, 2nd and 3rd grade. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons we looked at map testing.
But
And-
3rd grade does then, right? Okay.
And
So for 3rd grade then.
yeah. And I don't see any problem with asking, our superintendent and our directors to come back and provide us that input once we get the SBAC testing results back. I know one of the reasons I was pretty adamant about using MAP is because teachers get instant results. And SBAC testing, we do have students who opt out of that. And I will say, I know we have some of our best students who opt out of that test. And so I don't know that the scores will be an accurate reflection. Whereas with the MAP testing, our students take those several times throughout the year. And I am all about something that will help our teachers see what they can, where our students need help. And where the MAP provides instant results, I feel like that's helpful for our teachers right away. And, you know, Susan, your thing about looking at actual proficiency on the SBAC, I don't see any issue with also looking at that and having a report to help us see where we are on our goal. Any other thoughts from the board?
Just jumping in there, I regret that I was not able to attend the second public meeting for the board goals. But I would concur in regards to the MAP that it does allow our educators the ability to make adjustments more quickly. And to Susan's point, I think that it would also be good to hear that those reports coming back so that we can then, I guess, test the validity of what the proficiency model shows with MAP. But I don't know that we necessarily need to change the goals that were decided on at the last public meeting regarding this.
And just for the record, I am not opposed to MAP testing at all. So I don't want everybody to think that. So I like the compromise of let's still look at SBAC where we can, because I'm sorry, I forgot that second grade isn't part of that. And the only other comment I had, as far as I went back and looked at when we did the thing, goals with Deb Oliver, we were more specific on saying, and I'm just using an example, will increase, and I'll skip all the percentages, but it said May 2021 to May 22. So I don't know if you feel like we need to have that or if it matters. I just comparing what we had from last time. So up to you guys. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, I think we did discuss that in the goal setting workshop that we do May. So I think we can probably easily add that in where we have May, because those numbers that we have right there are from May. So I think that's a great suggestion that we add May to that.
To clarify, the spring MAP growth reading assessment, is that always conducted in May? Or is there ever an opportunity or an indication when that would not be available by May?
They do MAP 3 times a year. So
Right.
we were just thinking by the time they get to spring, isn't that what we decided that
Well,
we
we'd
would be
have-
working
Yeah.
with that one?
Did they tell us though that every school takes that test at different
little bit.
times? They're not all on a certain schedule.
Yeah, that was my only concern with the May date, is I didn't want that to
They're still
pigeonhole us.
done by then. Beginning of June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then your May date, those would still be using numbers though from the spring assessment, is that correct?
From the map.
Okay,
So basically we would just be looking at it in May, from May to May. Does that sound
Yeah, and like I
agreeable?
said, maybe it doesn't make a difference. I was just comparing what we had gone over.
I'm not sure it makes a difference because we're going to be comparing the spring MAP growth reading assessment or the spring MAP growth mathematic assessment.
And I think that those should be listed as interim goals, not just, we have our main goal.
Mhm.
And then, like we did before, these should be our interim goals so that Superintendent Anderson can give us reports on those interim goals. So I maybe that should be clarified in there that those are interim goals.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on goal 1? And we, like I say, we would welcome public input. So if you have thoughts, please go ahead and share with us. We'll go ahead and move on to goal 2. And Brooke, would you like to read that one?
Sure. Increase the percentage of 4th through 7th grade students who are projected to be proficient or advanced on the SBAC mathematics assessment by 3% each year for the next 3 years as measured by the spring MAP growth mathematics assessment. Did you read the percentages too? Do I need to do that? Okay, so 2023 through to 2024 from 24.3% to 27.2%, from 2024 to 2025 from 27.7% 30.3% to 30.3%. 2025 to 2026 from 30.3% to 33.3%.
All right, any discussion on goal 2?
Same as, my thoughts are the same as the first one.
Okay. Yeah.
Same as the first.
Madam Chair, this is exceptionally minor, but just to be specific, on the goal number 2, the increase to 27.2, I believe, should be 27.3 to keep it consistent.
There we go. That one. We can make that correction. All right, any other thoughts on goal 2? All right, as this is a non-action item, this will be coming back in the next meeting. And we will, again, welcome public input, thoughts, direction, and you are welcome to share those with us individually, email us, send them to Cassie Gray so that we can have any thoughts compiled to look at as a board as we move forward. All right, if there's nothing else on item 2. Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Sort of.
Sort of. Okay. So we are rapidly approaching Elko, but I did just want to give a few assurances there. I appreciate the conversation. I guess the one thing to inform you on is in the aftermath of having our board goals workshop and discussing how we would utilize that data, I requested from Ray for him to gather the last 6 years worth of not only each of the fall, winter, spring administrations of MAP for those grade levels, but also to compare to Susan's point and what we were discussing, to compare how the spring proficiency, how accurate that is as a representation of what they actually tested on. And so we will have all of those numbers ready to go, with the last one obviously being when we get the numbers in July. So if we do get our SBAC numbers prior to our only meeting in July, then we will plan on having that data ready to present to you at that time. Otherwise, we'll wait till I think it's August 1st is the first one of that month. So either the first or the second board meeting of the 23-24 school year, we'll make sure to have all that data just to give us an idea of how reliable a predictor that number has been in the recent past, and help kind of guide us if there is some sort of margin of error, how we can take that into consideration as we move forward for the next few years with this goal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right, we'll move on to item 2.8. Receipt, review, and discussion of proposed changes to policy CH, administrative personnel, salary schedules, and annual leave for superintendent and district administrative personnel. This is also a non-action item and basically a first reading. So discussion from the board.
Madam Chair, briefly, and perhaps Mr. Anderson can answer this. Are all certified negotiated agreements available on board docs, or specifically on board docs? And if not, at least on a public website?
Cody Grink for the record. The negotiated agreements are on the district webpage.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is, as has been pointed out in the past, board docs is kind of our most transparent, easily accessible information source. Having the formula tables combined into policy or embedded within policy certainly keeps it consistent and keeps it readily available. And so I just wanted to point that out, that since we're removing those tables, and I understand the purpose behind removing the tables because it's already in a master agreement, but I just wanted to point that out, that does remove some of that accessibility. Neither a recommendation to keep or withdraw, but just for point of information for the board to consider.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else?
what does it mean to be negotiated with the superintendent? So as a director, how does that process work? The director comes to the superintendent and says, I think I need a raise? Like, I'm not sure I know what that means.
Basically, yes, would be negotiated, not necessarily I need a raise, but would be on that. I don't have it in front of me, but not the role ratio, but just that ratio there. Part that's negotiated based on your experience. Whatever the superintendent's previous precedent and how he deals with the other directors as well. But yes, that's an individual thing.
And so the percentages that are listed in here simply give the guidelines for the superintendent. Superintendent would not, for example, under assistant superintendent, be able to exceed the 0.95% ratio or go below the 0.85% ratio, since that's what's listed on the document. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this one? All right, just a reminder, it's a non-action item. So if there are no other questions or recommendations, we will move on to item 2.9, which is receipt, review, and discussion of proposed changes to policy JCD, rights and responsibilities, dress code. This is a non-action item.
Hi, so as the background information indicates, this is just to keep up with a change in statute, or I guess I don't know if it's statute yet, but there was a bill passed recently which allowed for graduating seniors to incorporate the wearing of certain regalia of cultural or religious significance up to this point. So I think this bill was passed maybe like 2 to 3 weeks before graduation, and up to that point, it had always been up to just individual schools or to districts if a district wanted to have a policy about it. And so even within our own district, we had some inconsistency where certain schools were pretty okay with it and other schools were not, because it could become difficult to manage what qualifies as cultural, what qualifies as religious, that sort of thing. It becomes a really nuanced conversation. So sometimes people just took the path of least resistance and said, yeah, we just wear the official stuff. But probably largely due to a very public case in Clark County last year, if I remember correctly. It drew the attention of some legislators, and so this bill was passed this legislative session. And kind of the main guiding principle there is, it's not just free range on this. It does still need to be kind of, carefully considered, but as long as it is a reasonable addition to their cap and gown and the official stuff, then it should be allowed. Should there be a discrepancy, there's a measure for making an appeal and that sort of thing. And kind of the big determining factor is how distracting and how kind of, in your face is this going to be? Is it going to take away from the importance of the ceremony? And so all those factors being considered, the language that's in there that has been added is a simple reflection and our interpretation of the bill that was recently passed.
All right, any other questions from the board or recommendations on this policy JCD?
I have a question about the dress code, and I might be taking it too literally, maybe. Talking about like 1B, when the grooming,
I can't hear what she's saying.
let's say it's somebody that's homeless and hasn't had a shower available to them in a while. That doesn't mean that the school can't say, hey, we've noticed, and find shower privilege. I don't know, do something about that, because then in C, it says they shall be suspended. So there's leeway for the principals to address those situations before they go as far as suspension, right?
Hi, sorry. We actually just pulled up to the offices. I'm just going to come in. Can you hold that question for a second?
We'll hold.
Run.
I'm just curious with the dress code part, if there was somebody, and I just used a homeless student as an example, but anyone that for some reason they haven't had a availability of being able to shower or take care, it doesn't mean that they automatically would get suspended. It's up to the school to like, hey, you know, we know you need shower privileges or something. Like they address those situations before it gets so bad that they need to suspend them, right?
Yeah, just, I mean, from a kind of perspective of having been someone in that position before where you're trying to work with kids maybe in a tough situation like that, you would certainly be well informed of what their circumstances are, and you'd work with them to make sure we wouldn't bar anyone from their graduation because they've don't have access to showers or what someone else might consider the proper clothing for a graduation. There's a lot of workability there to make sure the student's able to appropriately be recognized and celebrate their accomplishment of graduating high school. So we'd work with those kids and those families.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, at the end there on C, of a student's prohibited from wearing an item, and they do a written appeal, do we need a date in there? Because like, what does that mean? Like, I can tell you a day before, like, or am I just going too far with that?
No. That's a good question. I think what this might be the most complicated, well, it's not even really complicated, but just the part that people are gonna have to think about when they do this is, because if I'm a student and or a staff member and I don't properly plan out this timeline, it's not going to allow for kids to do those things. So it will probably, we'll work with the administrators to say, hey, make sure by, you know, X date, you've communicated this with your graduating seniors, and they need to inform you if they plan on wearing an item of cultural or religious significance, so that you can kind of run that by them. Because if graduation is on June 10 and they come to you on June 8 and say, hey, can I wear this thing? And it's huge and obstructs people's view and that sort of thing. And then you say no, well, that student isn't going to get their opportunity to make that appeal before graduation. So it'll just be a matter of having that timeline, you know, be considerate of that possibility.
Along those lines, on day of graduation, do we leave this with the principal to make that decision?
Absolutely, yes.
And then there's no appeal process for graduation?
Correct. If that conversation has not been had in advance, and that onus will be put, because that onus belongs on the student to make that responsible decision of, I know I intend to wear X item. I need to inform my administrator that I'd like to do that and work through that process with them. If they neglect to do that, then the administrator will inevitably have to make that call. And that's not unlike other situations, like if we have prom and we have told you what you may wear and may not wear at prom, and someone shows up wearing something that they should not be wearing at prom, or an item that they should not have with them, then you have to make a call in that moment. And that will be the administrator's discretion only.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may suggest one change. Again, this is fairly minor, and this actually isn't even in the area that's already been delineated as being changed. In 1B, approximately halfway through, indicates the principal, when in his opinion, the student's dress. May just be good to change that pronoun to perhaps there, so that when we have if we have not already had a female principal at a high school in Elko County, when it happens.
We have one now, Stormy McCarthy.
Oh, yes, Stormy and Jack. Yeah.
Yeah, we can fix that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other guidance on that item? Okay, we'll move on to item 2.10, receipt, review, and discussion of proposed new policy JGG, student welfare, suicide prevention. Again, this is a non-action item as well.
Yes, so along with this, so there are 3 attachments. One of those is the proposed policy, which would be a new one. And it is, you know, the background information is very concise. The statute that is also attached is much more in depth. And this same requirement is versed out in our emergency operations plan. And we discovered that there is a need to have one. And so when the statute was created, the state was responsible for developing a model policy for districts to be able to pattern the policy after. And so that is primarily what you see in front of you is the policy, the model policy, as it's called, that the Department of Education produced as directed by the legislature when this was created.
All right, thoughts from the board?
Madam Chair, I just handed to the rest of the board members and as well as in between Ms. Gray and Mr. Anderson, some thoughts that I had on this proposal. Happy to enter that into the minutes if need be, or into the record if need be. First thing up that I have isn't actually listed in here, but it does concern the legal side. So perhaps Mr. Stanton, or sorry, Rob can help us with this. The definition of at risk. If we fail to identify a student who is at risk, does that put a liability onto us? So specifically under 3.A. And I don't know how to phrase this so much as basically my question is, once a student has committed an act that is listed under 3A, if we don't then define them as at risk because it's now in policy, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So this is not the same at risk as like when we get a like the at risk funding we get from the Pupil Center funding program. This is a different type of at risk. It's at risk of suicide. Within the statute that has been attached to this, it reads, this is number 3 in the statute, and it says, it must address the needs of groups of pupils at a high risk of suicide, including without limitations, and it lists several groups of people that could be considered at high risk. And so, those, for example, one of them is a pupil affected by a suicide, right? Like it's impossible to know we have 10,000, or I guess in 7 through 12, we have roughly 5,000 kids. So it's hard to know every kid in that group who has been affected by suicide. And so I think it is not our responsibility to go out and identify every person that way. But should you, whether you're a counselor or an administrator or whatever your role is, and you happen to know that about that student, one or more of these things, or it could be anything else. It says without limitation. So there could be other things that would make someone susceptible. And so it's more of a, on your honor may not be the right word, but if you know someone is at a risk, then you're supposed to really make sure there's an effort there to take care of them. And but it's tough to, I mean, we're not going to have like a list of kids at every school that says it's these kids. You just, from a day-to-day basis, you work with those students, you know them, and as you know that they fall into that category, then you make sure you're taking care of them. Okay. And the statute specifically states that there must be something in the policy that addresses groups of students at risk. So that's why that part is in there like that, because that's a required element of the policy.
Okay, I appreciate that. So moving on, far be it for me to question the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the smart people that put the booklet together. I'll take a little bit more liberty with questioning our legislators sometimes. With that said, the NRS that this is written on, 388.256, indicates that there is to be a policy developed by the Nevada Department of Education. Have they released that policy yet, or have they adopted the AFSP model school policy as well? Do we know?
The model one that we have here is the one that the state gave to us
Okay.
as their
Is their policy?
Yep.
Okay, I apologize if I missed that. So
that's
then
okay.
moving into the suggestions that I have, I noticed that parents and community members aren't included in a crisis team. Obviously, I understand the sensitivity of having a parent of a recently deceased student on a crisis team, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also have folks from outside the realm of education on that crisis team. So the first change that I made is on page 2 under 3B, and in red, it just simply says community members / parents, or adds community members / parents to the crisis team, just for consideration. I, again, do not mean to question what the professionals are doing, but just a suggestion. And I'd like to see if that would be some reason to exclude the community members and or parents from a crisis team. I also understand that each crisis team would be unique to each school. And I'm not insisting that there be a parent, but we are here for students, and parents, I believe, have a right to be involved in something as sensitive as what we're discussing.
Yeah, I can discuss that concept. I will say that when you read 3B in its entirety, there is a common thread there of the people on the crisis response team should be people who are specifically trained in suicide and mental health, not just suicide, but mental health crisis intervention and services.
Right.
And so in order to maintain that concept of making sure the people that are involved in crisis response of that nature are specifically trained in that, if you start throwing in
Any parent.
people who are not,
Right.
then that sort of dilutes the, I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be value, but that no longer really holds to what I think the intent of that paragraph is. I will say from our standpoint, we are already including community members. We collaborate with several entities in the area in the development of our crisis response and in the aftermath of the unfortunate situations we have had. Those organizations have helped us in our response. So we are involving community members already, but they are community members who fit that description of being trained in this type of response.
Great. Then perhaps if we just add that community member component, that would work. The next change that I'm suggesting would be under 4A. And it's in regards to the district policy implementation. It's currently states this may be an existing staff person. I don't understand why we would have a non-staff person doing that. Therefore, I was thinking that maybe we should change it to say this should be a staff person. I'm assuming that each of our schools would have, as outlined previously, a coordinator.
Yeah.
And therefore, it seemed weird to bring somebody else in to have that coordinator as the point of contact, not be an existing staff person. This doesn't restrict us to saying it must be, but it certainly gives way more weight to those that are within the system already.
So you said to change it from, you would like to see from this may be to this should be, as that kind of says it ought to be, but if there is for some reason some crazy highly qualified person who exists in that community, then they could potentially, and they're willing to serve in that capacity, they could.
Right. Instead of giving permission, I look at this as giving direction.
Okay. I mean, sure.
Same page 4B at the beginning. Currently, it just says that all staff shall receive at minimum annual professional development within the AFSP model school policy. In reading through the whole booklet, it does indicate a suggestion of no less than 1 hour of training. So I've simply added at minimum 1 hour of annual professional development, just making that recommendation off of what the booklet had indicated, but did not include within the main body of the document. Again, these don't have to be changes. These are just suggestions. And I figured this was probably easier to write these out and then redline them. Next one is on the next page. I believe this is 4D. Currently, it reads, this policy shall be distributed annually and be included in all student and teacher handbooks. This is a 15-page document. To include that in every one of our printings may be a little difficult. So I would suggest that we change that to this policy shall be distributed annually. Sorry. Yes, be distributed annually, be mentioned in all student and teacher handbooks and included on the district website. Basically still putting it out there available without having the necessity of printing 15 pages of policy.
Yeah, I will say what you've suggested is probably a closer reality to what we do, because we have so many lengthy documents. Like we have like the bullying policy, for example, is massive, and it's in our student and staff handbooks. Those things are frequently referenced and redirected. In fact, a lot of people don't even print these handbooks off. They just say, here's where it can be found. People go over it with the kids and parents and say that's where you can find that. That's how things are distributed these days.
Great.
So your wording's fine there. I think it's fine.
Next, the next one is fairly minor. It would be under 5B3. It simply references a section called parental notification involvement. The section is identified as parental notification and involvement. So a minor addition there and typo. On that same page, this would be item 5C. And it says school shall, this is in regards to calling 911. School staff may tell the dispatcher that the student is a suicidal, emotionally disturbed person. And if we're already on the call with 911 and we've already identified what the situation is, I think it's important that our emergency response folks know what they're walking into. And therefore, I believe we should say the school staff shall tell the dispatcher what the situation is. So again, it changes that from may and permission and gives direction. And this gives a specific description. I realize, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the only challenge to that would be not necessarily everyone who's making that call, I think would be qualified to identify if someone is suicidal, emotionally disturbed person or not. So someone may be speaking above their head on that one. That I think only unless the school staff member who's making that call happens to be trained in that arena, that might be a stretch for them to definitively say this person is that, because they're probably not in a position to make that diagnosis. So that can be the challenge there.
That's where I was going to say, I recognize that would be a diagnosis and that we're trying to also keep confidentiality. Yeah. It's just that in that section above, it says when a student is actively suicidal and immediate safety, if such as a weapon is in the possession of the student, that's what I'm saying. We need to not say it's okay to do this. We need to say you need to give the dispatch every opportunity to know what those officers are walking into.
What if you reworded it to say school staff shall tell the dispatcher that the student may be a suicidal, emotionally disturbed person? Might be.
And or include weapon.
Right.
Because I think that's the main thing for me, is we need to be able to tell dispatch that there is a weapon involved.
Yeah.
So that's just all I was thinking is, Brooke, I think that's a good thing as well.
I'll relook at that section. I'm not sure I will keep the wording you've proposed, but I see the value in what you're saying, and maybe there's a different way of rewording things that I'll have something that reflects possibly a different idea when it comes back.
Okay. Moving forward a few pages, we're now on section 8, subsection F. This talks about engaging a crisis team and ensuring that steps should be taken to ensure student safety and well-being, including students who may have had emotional or physical proximity to the victim. I'd like to see language in here that includes staff as well. If there is, Lord forbid, a suicide active in our, I shouldn't say active, but if it certainly takes place on school grounds, I think that it's important that we recognize our staff will need assistance as well. And I get this as a student-centered policy. Reality is our staff will be impacted as well.
Yeah, I think there's language elsewhere in the document that does say students and staff, and so that would be consistent with that other language.
I think I'm almost done, and I greatly appreciate this leeway. Now moving forward to section 10, subsection B. step 1 towards the bottom. I take exception to how this is written. It's currently written, if a parent does not want to disclose cause of death, an administrator or mental health professional from the school who has a good relationship with the family shall be designated to speak with the parents to explain the benefits of sharing mental health resources and suicide prevention with students. I understand the concept behind it, but to have benefits associated with suicide to me is offensive. So a simple change that I think still captures the meaning would be the family, a good relationship with the family shall be designated to speak with the parents to explain how sharing mental health resources and suicide prevention with students could prevent further pain, harm. Put some other language in there, but just remove benefits.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. I'll back that one up.
I believe that may be maybe it for the changes that I had. Right? I know, sorry. I appreciate that, but I figured typing it out and distributing it would be better than
I actually appreciated this.
Okay,
Then I
good.
could keep up with-
jump here and jump there. There is a question that I have on subsection 6. It indicates, and I don't have a change on this, so it's not identified within the document I distributed, but it indicates that there would be a hesitancy or a delay in notifying parents. Unless there's abuse or neglect suspected, what other reasons would we have to notify how would notifying the parent put the student at increased risk of harm? Does that make sense? I don't have
talking
a,
about section 6,
yeah,
parental
So-
notification involvement.
yes.
And I don't like that section at all.
The whole section?
Well, I do not like where it says unless notifying the parent will put the student at increased risk of harm. I don't see a situation where the school has any right to keep it because it says the principal, designee, or school mental health professional shall inform the student's parents or guardian on the same school day or as soon as possible, anytime a student is identified as having any level of risk for suicide or if the student has made a suicide attempt. And then it says pursuant to policy law, unless notifying the parent will put the student at increased risk of harm. I just don't think that schools, anyone in a school should have the right to decide whether it's beneficial to tell the parent or not. I think that it is our right as parents to know if our child is having a mental health crisis that involves suicidal ideation or anything like that. I think keeping that from parents is not good.
And thank you, because that perfectly captured what I was looking at is unless abuse is suspected, I would agree. We should not be putting our staff in the position of deciding whether or not a parent should be notified unless there's reason to not notify them. But I'm not the experts and I'd like to to hear other.
Even if it was a situation of abuse or anything like that, I think you still notify the parent, but you also notify other agencies that would look into that abuse or neglect or anything like that. But I think, and I can see why some people would say, well, if it increases the risk of harm to the child because their parent overreacts to the situation and then it causes more problems and then they do commit suicide, then the district could be held liable. But if someone in a school district knows that a child has suicidal ideas or has attempted, it even says in here, has attempted suicide.
Yep. That's the fourth line.
To-
Has
yeah,
made a suicide attempt. Mhm.
To decide, oh, I don't think it would be a good idea to tell their parents, and then the child does commit suicide, the district is just as liable. And I think even more so. I don't like anything about that. I've talked to my kids about, we don't keep secrets. If anybody ever has a conversation with you that says, we can talk with each other and your parents don't, ever have to know anything about this, you can open up to me, whatever else, or any kind of let's keep secrets or your parents don't have to know type of deal. makes my blood boil thinking about it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, so if I could just jump in a little bit there, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said. I'm just going to try to give some, I don't even know if it's the other side of the coin, but just some more thoughts there. So presumably in all of these situations, there will be people who are, again, trained in crisis response and how to handle situations of suicide. These are, I mean, I know we know our kids, but these people know suicide and how to handle situations. So again, presumably there will be some consideration there from that professional's perspective. I will say this, in any case, wherever possible, again, speaking from a school administrator standpoint, we always want to include parents on what's going on, whether it's discipline or academics or mental health or whatever it is. The goal is to include parents in that decision. The closer a teacher, the teacher, parent, student triangle can be connected contiguously the whole time, the better it's going to be. And we know that. So the wording that's there, I'm going to have to look into, I may ask and inquire a little bit about the pursuant to policy law, because if there is, I can't think of a policy that would contradict that, but maybe there is case law or other type of law that would indicate it would be a poor decision in certain situations. I don't know every potential situation, but again, to your perspective is valid. This was developed by people who are experts in this field. If it turns out that is an element you absolutely, as a board, would love to strike, and we can say, just get rid of that parenthetical section, then so be it. So right now, I do feel a request to strike that. I'm going to let you know that I'm noting the request. I'm going to look into what it means by pursuant to policy law. And I'm going to hear what Josh Byers has to say.
Well, I was just reading it. We're 6, right? We're all reading the same.
Yeah. Yep.
The principal designee or school mental health professional shall inform the student's parent or guardian on the same day or as soon as possible, anytime a student is identified as having any level of risk for suicide, or if the student has made a suicide attempt. I'm reading it as we're informing them. Am I like not?
But then the parentheses says unless doing
notifying
so.
the parent will put the student at an increased risk of harm. Then they don't need to notify the parent that their child just.
Which would mean
tried to
someone
commit.
made that determination that it was, the student would be at increased risk of harm, therefore we're not.
So the
notifying
same people that we give the authorization later that they can handle the crisis, they can't handle this crisis then? That's what I'm asking a rhetorical
That's
question. I'm
what it
just
sounds
asking.
like, yeah.
So we're saying that they can't handle that crisis, make that judgment, but they can if there's a crisis. So if it ends up on the news, they can make the crisis. But if they're sitting in front of a student, they can't make that decision.
I'm looking at it as the safety of the student is always paramount.
For sure.
But we should codify in policy that notification of parents should happen.
If the parent is the one that's implicating it.
When you say implicating it, are you saying if the parent is the one that's driving the child to suicide?
So most of this, we're not talking, fortunately, and hopefully the trend continues to come back up. We're not talking about we're talking about young adults here, is what this really impacts. Now, it needs to be for everybody, right? It needs to be for all students, but we're talking about young adults, lots of hormones, lots of emotions going on here, okay? If the trigger is mom and dad, we're gonna say, hey, by the way, your kid has these suicidal ideations, just so you know. So when they get home, don't say anything. And then they go there, but mom and dad are already the trigger. So it's going to trigger it even more. That's what I read this as. I'm not for like hiding from mom and dad, but I'm also not going to throw a child under the bus because we need to absolutely 100% tell mom and dad what's going on. This is saying when they make the assessment based on a crisis in front of somebody is how I'm reading it. I mean, if there's other language you need in there, please, but the next time we read it, bring that language forward because I'm absolutely for we need to tell mom and dad. There doesn't need to be hiding from mom and dad. I'm 100% behind all that. But I don't read these articles at that. I read these articles as unless it's going to cause further harm with that child.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I think there's just a disagreement. They're saying nobody should be able to keep that from
the parent regardless. And you're saying, I think there are potential scenarios based on what the people we've identified as the experts say about this topic. I think it's just a difference of opinion, is what it
So-
sounds like.
My thoughts are if the experts think that in letting or making sure that the parents are notified of what's going on because they're possibly the trigger for the child.
Mhm.
I think there's still ways to inform the parents of what's happening and invite the parents in for these experts to go over things with them and to help them through this with their child so that it doesn't escalate the situation and make things worse. I think there are ways to go about it in a good way that can still have a positive outcome where the parents aren't being held like in the dark on what's going on with their child.
Well, we also need to figure out what our community is doing. We all know we're low on community resources on this too as well. This seems to be written for an area where they've got, specialists in just about anything. And so that might be something that maybe that's where we need to figure out where that's at, because
Another thought about this, and I actually hadn't read it this way until, because now we're pouring over it, and I think I've read it 14 times in the last 3 minutes. But perhaps it doesn't mean you never tell the parent. I think the wording at the beginning is on the same day or as soon as possible. And maybe sometimes the same day or as soon as possible would potentially be hazardous or dangerous. When we talk about other situations within policy, there's types of language that say, you try to get to the bottom of it, you try to figure out the right plan. So maybe what that means is that crisis, I'm just hypothetical situation, the crisis person identifies that, probably not good to say something right now today. But we have a team and a plan in place to work with this kid and to try to come up with the right timing and a way to share it in a way that's not dangerous. Maybe it's not so much that we never tell them, this is going to be our little secret, but maybe not holding them to the day of or as soon as possible, given a potential scenario. Maybe that's another way of reading that.
If that's the case, then I think that this section needs to be added to clarify that, and there needs to be an addition.
Some language.
Some language added that spells out exactly what would happen if that were the case, what the next steps would be.
I think Brooke said it well in that when she said there's a way to find positive on this, bring the parents in for coaching, because Lord forbid, hypothetical, if I'm the trigger for my son and I don't know that, then I probably should know that. And additionally, if I am the trigger for my son and I do know that, there should be other law enforcement and other organizations involved at that point, because that's clearly an unhealthy relationship. So either way, I think, being able to have that discussion, I think is good. I just wanted to make sure that we're not saying, no, don't tell the parent. Thank you.
I just want to be clear that we are saying the same thing. Like, I'm not saying, I want to make sure the public knows I'm not saying that either.
Right.
Parents should be notified, but if we have a crisis situation, then it needs to be handled appropriately. So.
And as we've seen, every one of these types of crises is unique in its own right and necessarily has a different nuanced response every time. It's a general framework, but every response is going to be unique because every child is unique.
Okay, so just a thought. I just am running through in my head in what situation you wouldn't want to tell them same day or as soon as possible. If they are at risk of suicide or have made a suicide attempt. They don't sleep at the school. They have this crisis situation. You have your crisis team deal with it. Mom and dad aren't notified. Where are they going that night? Home.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Maybe what I'll do is, because I said I'd look into the policy law, we have several very highly trained members of this response team, and I'll just ask them, hey, what type of situations is this talking about? I'm sure they'll have some examples of what that might mean and maybe give us some context. And I can just give you all a follow-up message, not something we'll go back and forth on, just like, hey, here's some situations that this might apply to. And I don't know, maybe it changes thoughts a little bit, or maybe you're like, no, I still feel the same way. But perhaps that would be helpful to hear maybe from their perspective, because that's what we're saying is we're putting the trust in those professionals. That I love the way you said it, Josh. We're trusting them to do that. So maybe we just need to hear from them, like what that means to them, and
That's what I was just going to ask.
how
If
we
you
would
could look at
process
like
that.
what is current practice, then we can put it on paper. As we've seen, some things current practice aren't what's on paper.
Yep.
Let's get our operating off.
Certainly.
Yeah, and I just think if that's gonna stay in there and if we're not gonna strike that, then that policy needs to have more wording added to it to describe exactly if this did happen, what the next steps would be.
So I think when Josh says, what is current practice and why is that the current practice? I think that would help us to identify, do we need to, or are we really set on taking this out? Or is this something that we now have more context to understand?
And current practice for a community like us. Current practice in Las Vegas is not going to fly for current practice here.
Yeah, I'll talk to our people here about that. I won't call Clark County and ask them what examples they can think of.
I wouldn't have expected the same, and I appreciate the faith that you're restoring my faith.
Oh,
in you
good.
on that.
I'm
So
sorry
thank
I
you.
lost it, but
You
I'm
did.
hopefully it's
So I should
restoring.
maintaining. How about that?
Thank you,
Maintaining
thank
my faith. Madam Chair, the last thing I have, and this is a serious issue, and I don't mean to make light of it and be jovial, but I do appreciate the discussion that's going on. The last thing that I have is on section 7, the next page or the next section, reentry procedures. This talks pretty heavily about reentry of the student that was in the mental health crisis at the time, but I didn't necessarily see discussion of what happens to the fellow students for 2 reasons, or on 2 points. One, I think, I don't know how to say this quite right. So if I put my foot in my mouth, I really apologize. I think there's sometimes an over tendency to treat with kid gloves our students because of things that they may have experienced. So I want to make sure that we're being careful on that. But at the same time, the reality also is that these kids have experienced something traumatic. And reality is these kids, no matter how much we're not talking about it for the sake of the student and not having ideation and suicide contagion, the reality is these kids are going to be talking about it. So I think it may be good to have a process of bringing fellow students together to say, here's the reality of where we are, and how do we have that discussion in a respectful, responsible way without coddling them, for using one of my dad's favorite words. And so I'm just throwing that out there. It does mention in here different things of having small group discussions, et cetera. I just think if we're doing this policy, we need to look at what fellow students are going to go through too, because I think we know that students can be mean sometimes, but students also can have it amazingly, or kids, youth, young adults can have amazingly open hearts as well. And we need to respect that they could be a source of solution, or at least be able to help on that. So support, thank you. So just throwing that out there, I don't know what the solution is, but just something to say, yeah, we need to have this, and perhaps it's the Hope Squad, those kind of things. We've got things that are in there, but just something that's not just the student that was directly involved in the crisis, but some, the fellow students as well, the peripheral.
Yeah, my only, it's not even really a pushback, but just a death by suicide is inherently going to be public. Most suicide attempts that do not result in a death by suicide, I think, are not ever public. It's very private and very few people know about it. So I think to detail how we're going to let all the kids know, and most of them probably don't know already. Obviously, and I know that's not what you're insinuating, but again, going back to the concept of this is we got to be careful about not putting every little step of every little thing in here because of two things. Number one, and we've talked about both of them, but I'm going to reiterate them. Number one, we have a crisis response team who knows how to handle those situations. And number two, every situation is going to be so unique. So again, this is a general framework of response and prevention, and not meant to detail every step of every situation, because that is an impossibility. But I hear what you're saying. And I think my brain also did go to, I bet Hope Squad would be pretty helpful in that regard. And so, yeah, we'll consider that. I'm not sure if it enters into adding into policy or not. Maybe it does, but maybe not either.
Madam Chair, I rest on this issue.
Okay. All right, is there any other discussion?
Unfortunately, yes. Sorry to lengthen it some more, but first of all, I think for me, reading this just shows me how much I do not know about any of this, and that it really needs to be left up to experts that know what they're doing, because this is awful important. I can have opinions, but I want to make sure that the experts are the ones involved. I reached out to a couple different people, only because I didn't have time to reach out to more that are what I would consider experts in suicide in our area. I know this is a model, but I think Elko County should develop more of its own plan and lay it out for for our area, I guess is a better way to put it, like each situation. One of the things mentioned to me was using a standardized scale, which they recommended the Columbia scale. And I just kind of went online. Like I said, I'm not claiming to be an expert on any of this or know a ton about it, but it's a standard evaluation that they use for students, teachers, like they have all of them. So they had mentioned that like a district-wide scale should be implemented. And I just printed off a copy of this if anyone wants to look at it. As far as like the training plan, we have several people in this area that do the Safe Talk training, which is a 3.5-hour training. That could definitely be useful, I think. There's also, I think it's called Assist. That's a 2-day training. But we have people in our area that can actually do these trainings, that they've been doing those trainings. How those will be done at a district-wide, obviously that's up to you guys of how that would work. What was the other? Let's see. As far as like, are we appointing a person that's already employed as a district level suicide prevention coordinator? Is that going to be a new position? Or are we designating someone that's already working for us as that person?
It's Paul Allen.
Okay. On page 10, it talks about youth suicide prevention programming. So are we purchasing programming? What content are they going to be using? And once again, we have teacher training to think about with that.
Mm-hmm.
On page 10, under intervention assessment and referral, and I'm not saying they aren't, but it does mention students being seen by a school employed mental health professional, and it mentions school counselor. Are all of our school counselors trained in mental health? And forgive me, I don't mean to offend anyone if they are. Or are they, do they know about the Columbia screening if we would use that? Just something to think about. Let's see. I know we talked about the crisis response team, so I'll skip that one. Same with educating our parents. I know Matt had suggested putting parents in on one of those sections. I'm more for like a task force to put them on something like that than to be on a crisis team. That's just my 2 cents, but we also still have professionals that can do safe talk training for parents. And we could have parent nights, even with working with PTAs or whatever, as far as those go. But I guess in the end, I would like to see us, I know 3 people that worked on actually developing a district policy for us last year, and it didn't go anywhere. I would like to see those people involved possibly in looking this over. Maybe even like Skylar Basania's using our, I don't know what people you've used to put together this policy, but I really think they really need to look it over with a fine tooth comb before we do, because we need to rely on our experts, not for me, not just my opinion on what I think, because I can think all I want, but that doesn't make it what's best for somebody in this kind of situation. So that's my 2 cents. So I encourage to reach out to those people.
What's the Columbia rubric? Yeah.
Here's an example. They have them for like a teacher, a counselor. There's different, they're all the same question. They just have the front pages different. They basically have all the same question, but it's consistent throughout. So our district needs something that each school has the same.
Is that to identify?
Yes.
Sorry, is that to identify those in mental crisis?
And I'm just going by what I'm learning about. The Columbia scale is accessible and easy to use with good results. And it's widely known. It's not, something that somebody just around here made up. But I think even contacting Larry Robb, Lynette Vega, Wendy Charleboy, and maybe they're already on that team. I think contacting them because they have dealt with it in our area, in our community, and I think they know. So that would just be a suggestion for the policy as well.
Any other comments on this one?
I just have one small comment, and I might just be reading it and understanding it wrong, but I feel like step 6 under the, let's see, what is it? The action plan steps, it's at the back. Step 6, yeah, develop memorial plans. I feel like this whole section kind of contradicts itself. Anybody else read that and think at the beginning, it's saying avoid planned on-campus physical memorials, photos, flowers, locker displays, funeral services, tributes, or flying a flag at half-staff because it inadvertently sensationalized the death and encouraged suicide contagion among vulnerable students. And then later on, it talks about memorial things and how long you can leave them up. And then at the back of that section, it says, note, it's noteworthy that even articles that are inappropriate to share with families may have been therapeutic for the students to create, allowing these memorials to stay in place for a brief period up to the funeral, up to approximately 5 days, and monitoring memorials while in place is recommended to avoid hostile and glamorizing messaging and to monitor for at-risk students. So I don't know, I just read that all. I thought maybe I'm just completely misunderstanding it all, but
It was
I
for
read it.
spontaneous.
Right,
memorials.
that's what it says. I read it a couple of times.
So
I
like kids
think
are
it's-
like, that's their spot and they start putting stuff.
Yeah,
spontaneous ones are, they just can't be planned, but spontaneous is fine. Because spontaneous memorials don't have the same effect of inadvertently sensationalizing the death and encouraging suicide contagion. I don't know, it just seems like it contradicts itself to me.
That's why we need to go to the experts because they know the proper way to do those things.
Yeah, so I
That's
think
why I like
that,
not
I think
having a
that should be
service.
looked into, that section. I don't know what to do with it, but.
okay. And again, I want to draw that this is developed by the experts.
Yeah. So it's not like we're not started from scratch, right? Like I just,
This, that is, and
I can tell you, I won't come to a special meeting. That's
Yeah.
what I won't do. I won't continue to add special meeting after special meeting.
Right.
with experts. Like we have experts that have drawn this whole thing up.
Correct.
We've done it. We're just trying to make it attached to what we have here. If they have something, I don't see anyone at the podium right now. And you know what? I invite them to come to the next meeting that we're going to read it.
2 weeks. We'll do this again. Yeah,
Those experts that are going to come, please have them come out. I'm here too. All of us are here. I don't see them here giving any information.
Yeah.
I did reach out to them to get information. So. I
Well,
will
if they're
ask them to
that
come
worried
to the
about it,
meeting.
why are they not contacting us as we put it on the board agenda then? Why am I calling them then? Other than if I have input in there. If I need to know that, I would have I'm glad you did. But you're saying we need to contact them. I don't see any of them here. They sent you a text message, maybe an email, but I don't see them here. If it was such important that we needed that expert on this item, I don't see them here. So I would encourage them to come up next meeting, give us a little presentation or talk about what we need to add. I don't know anything about the Columbia rubric that you have. I've never heard of it. I take care of mental health people all the time, but patients all the time. There's other rubrics we can use. There's standard forms we can use that are a lot more effective than what I see in front of it, unless they have that information in front of me. There's studies for those too as well, but I don't know why we have to start from scratch on every policy.
I didn't say start from scratch, but I'll stop reaching out to people.
I will say for those two topics, yeah, again, so this was developed by experts and these are the same things that what you see under numbers under step 6 there is consistent with what we were advised by our local experts in September and October. That is almost exactly how we handled those situations and per their recommendations. And then as far as the assessment goes, our schools all do conduct threat assessments for kids. And I can double check to make sure that I think to Susan's point, it wasn't necessarily so much the Columbia, rather let's make sure we have a consistent type of assessment. And so I feel pretty confident that we're doing the same type of assessment or this not type, but the same assessment district wide. And I'll verify that to make sure we are.
Can you remind me what was the program called that we just?
Hope Squad.
Hope Squad, but I thought there was one other one. Hope Squad, it must be it. Anyways,
For
like suicide awareness and prevention and stuff like that. You guys talked about it at the Carlin board meeting before I was on the
Hope
board.
Squad.
Was it Hope Squad?
I think it was Hope Squad.
It is
Okay.
Hope Squad.
I think that was the one.
Any other thoughts? I do appreciate Josh, saying if people come talk to us, this is definitely something that has happened in our community. I have lost, someone very close to me to suicide. And when you start putting these things in policy, it's challenging to get every aspect of everything. Like you say, every individual is going to have different experiences, whether it's the person who has chosen to try to take their life or does take their life and those around them. It's going to be a very different experience for everyone. And I think just recognizing that this is something we do have to talk about. This is something we do have to have a policy where if someone has attempted suicide and they come back to school, we have plans in place to help them. We have plans in place to help their friends. We have plans in place to assist teachers who are not experts, are not trained, but they are the person a student comes to because that's someone they trust. This is something that our community is dealing with. And we have to be willing to look at this with very open eyes, recognizing that experts do their job. However, they don't know every kid, and we do. Our teachers do, our staff does. When someone attempts suicide with social media, it is more known than it used to be. And so thinking that, we're going to have a policy that's going to address absolutely everything we're not going to get there, but we have to do the best we can to try to help our staff our students to care for those around them when they're in crisis, when they're at risk. And so I think the more we do look to people who are trained in this area, I think that's fantastic. But also listening to people in our community who have been involved at some level with the loss of a loved one or almost the loss of a loved one, I think that's really important as well, because they may not have expert training, but they have very personal involvement that should be reflected in how we deal with policy and with our students and our staff. So those are just my thoughts. All right, is there anyone else or any other comments on this or thoughts, excuse me? We will see this again shortly. And again, I like Josh's invitation. Please come share your thoughts with us. We don't want to leave things out that are really important to our community, because our community is unique and our students are unique in how they have been affected already. All right, if there's nothing else, we will move on to item 3.1, our consent agenda.
Madam Chair, move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the consent agenda is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director. And I know Jeff is not here, and I don't have any updates from NASB unless he left some with anybody else.
He planned on talking about AB 519, but I'll do it during my superintendent's report. I guess it doesn't matter where.
Perfect.
I'll just
Address it there. I figured you
let's
would.
do it all together. Yep.
Excellent. All right, we'll move on to item 4.2, items from board members.
Madam Chair, I'm going to jump in briefly. I have three things I'd like to see or discuss. Policy IKF deals with graduation with all schools moving to a 4-day schedule. It may be better to talk about policy IKF in advance before next graduation period, because we have 7 board members, 8 graduations, and we may need to just make sure that we're dealing with that so that we have some flexibility prior to. Not suggesting a specific day we do that, just prior to next graduation season. I'd also like to request, in looking, and I'm jumping ahead, Mr. Anderson, so not trying to steal your steam, but just prefacing what you're presenting with the board meetings coming up, the schedule. I would like to again request that at least one board meeting take place in the community of Spring Creek. 1 in 3 students attends a Spring Creek school. I realize there are some technological difficulties, Mac, and I think we can work through that. But I think it'd be good to have at least one meeting out in Spring Creek. Finally, in relation to the enrollment report, Mr. Anderson, perhaps we can discuss the remote schools and enrollment at the remote schools. When do we decide if that stays open? Is that a board decision? Is that an operations decision? What kind of discussion does that take place? Again, just prefacing your report. Madam Chair, thank you. And it was an honor to be able to participate in the 2 graduations I have attended, and I'm looking forward, if I may, to the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. We have been invited as the entire board by Program Director Ponder, and that will be this Friday, the 16th of June at 3 o'clock at the Elko Convention Center. Military personnel are invited to arrive in duty uniform with civilians and business casual.
All right, thank you. Any other items from board members? All right, we will move on to item 5.1, which is our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Matt, I'm gonna, you listed a bunch of stuff. I think I can address them all now though. So IKF, I think you said, that is on the list of things to discuss with you all. Just let you know, from trying to be a good community partner standpoint. Obviously graduation is a super important monumentous occasion for every person graduating. Our community has a very busy week every week that year because it coincides with the mining expo, and up to this point it hasn't really been a problem. because most of those graduations happen, at least here within Elko and in Carlin, or I guess Carlin's Thursday, but here in Elko, Spring Creek, that has been occurring on Friday. And I was told even, not all that long ago, it was Spring Creek would even do Saturday. The way the policy reads, that would then happen on Thursday, which does cause some conflict with events going on with the mining expo, as well as hotel availability in the area. So we may want to, I don't know if the policy already reads that they can just request a different day. So maybe there's nothing to do. But that leaves it up to them to request it if they want. And if they don't feel like requesting it, then they wouldn't necessarily have to. So if we feel like, and I've been talking with Annette Kerr from the Visitors Authority and other people in our community to make sure we're, for everyone, the thing they're doing is pretty darn important. But we also, if we all just, stand our ground sort of thing, it could end up being a negative impact to our community economy, people having to pick and choose between things that are all kind of crucial. So yeah, we'll look at that some more, and just wanted to, before we get into that conversation, I wanted to make sure you knew about that aspect of it as well. What was the second thing you mentioned, Matt?
Spring Creek and having a meeting out there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Third. What was the third thing?
Moving on. Third thing would be, what do we do with I've probably butchered the classification, the remote schools,
So
keeping them open.
Yeah, we're looking at that. There isn't like a fixed number, and that is an operational decision. We're looking at that. Right now, I think the lowest projected number for next year is 7. The number I've heard anecdotally is anywhere from like 6 is kind of you're pushing it. And then I think things have been closed at 4. What I would advise against is doing something on a one-off, because in a school like that, one family moves in, your population just went from 5 to 10 or 5 to 8 or whatever. It would have to, at my suggestion, and hopefully, I think it's reasonable, is you would want to track that and trend. Like if you have 3-4 consecutive years of we're at 4, we're at 3, we're at 4, we're at 5, like it's kind of looking like you may not have the population anymore. But just in the few years I've been here, I've seen Ruby Valley at 18 and I've seen Ruby Valley at 8, I think. So it just depends on that. So anyway, bottom line, operational decision, but give you an insight into how we look at that. And we certainly wouldn't make a change and remove someone's job and change kids' educational lives because one year looks like a low projection. Yep, that's what it is. Thank you for allowing us to be a little late today. We had a busy couple days. Dr. Higbee and Mr. Krenka and I rolled in a little late because the 3 of us, along with Mr. Smith, Mr. Allen, and Mrs. Turnahue, we were all up at the yearly Superintendent's Academy, which was awesome. Really great professional development and a lot of exciting things going on. In addition to us being up there across the street at the other hotel was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 of our site administrators going through it's called their organization is called NASA. It's spelled the same way, it just means different things. And they were having their conference, and but kind of we probably would have made it back in time if it were just for that. But the 3 of us detoured from the conference toward the end of that to go to Carson City, where today we were able to witness, and Mr. Higbee actually was part of the group of people that spoke, but witnessed the signing of Assembly Bill 519, which did a lot of things. Kind of the highlights of those being that it created a funding mechanism for rural counties to be able to levy certain taxes in order to have additional capital improvement funds available to schools, and the opportunity to leverage those things for a matching grant to a state account that has been established but not really used. And so the state has committed money there for all rural schools as well, and then additional money for schools on tribal lands throughout Nevada. And then kind of the main sentiment. And that is extremely important and has a lot of implications for our county, and working closely with our county commissioners and our other government entities to make sure we have a good cohesive plan for how we're going to move that forward. But another big highlight there is section 10 of that bill gives $64.5 million to build a new school on the Duck Valley Reservation for our Owyhee Combined School. So that bill goes into effect July 1, and I don't know exactly when the money comes, but the money will come to and through the Elko County School District for all aspects of that project. We will work closely with the tribal council because they have some money they're dedicating on their side as well for infrastructure. But as far as the managing of the building of that school, that's going to come through our offices. The money will come through our offices, and that is we're projecting about a 3-year project to get that going. So with any luck, we'll have our current Owyhee freshmen going into next year might have a new school to graduate in by their senior year. That's kind of the hope right now. Obviously, a lot that has to go in between now and then, but it was a pretty special moment. There were a lot of people there. Just as a recap, all but one legislator from both the Assembly and the Senate voted in approval of this bill. Very successful bipartisan bill. And we had I don't know how many Owyhee kids were there, but the school came with students. It's not a school day. They're all on summer break, but they came over. Tribal council representatives, community members, tribal advocates from all around the state, lots of assemblymen and women there. And so it was a great moment, lots of emotion and joy for a lot of people. And so we were able to be present for that, and it represents some good things for students in Elko County School District. I'm not sure if there's anything else Jeff would have wanted me to mention on that, but that's what we were there for. And as soon as it was over, we hopped in the car and drove here. There was some crazy rain. I don't know what y'all had here today, but it was bonkers. I was going 25 miles per hour at one point on I-80. It was wild. And yeah, I was able to go to some graduations last week. I was reminded that last year at this time, I didn't get to go to any graduations because I got really, really, really sick that week. And I was bummed that in my first opportunity as a superintendent, I wasn't able to do that. So this year was pretty awesome. Got to go to Wells, got to go to Elko High and Spring Creek High, and congratulate almost every senior that walked at all 3 of those schools. So that was pretty amazing, and look forward to going to some of the other graduations next year. Make sure I make the rounds and give everybody love. And I sent an email out to all of our staff and stuff last week, but really just want to give one more thank you to our staff members across the district. Any school year, you pick a year, any school year is a tough school year. There's always challenges ahead. There's every kid and situation and class that you have as a teacher is unique. Everything is different. We even had a couple of our schools ended the school year with no power. Like it just happened to work out that the 2 hours the power was out was their last 2 hours of the school year. So the crazy things always happen, but that was just like a microcosm of we always do whatever we have to do to make sure things happen. And our educators are so dedicated, and really appreciative to everybody at every level of employment in our district. It doesn't happen without everyone's efforts. And so I'm supremely grateful to all of them, and looking forward to next school year. Lots of good things on the horizon, and looking forward to living in crescendo and going forward and getting better every day. And that's the plan. Lots of work to do this summer, and I will conclude with that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Anderson? All right, we'll move on to item 6.1, which is the accounts payable.
Madam Chair, move to approve the accounts payable as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, abstentions, or disclosures?
I'm going to disclose that I have a close relative working for Wells Rural Electric, but I will not be abstaining from voting.
Thank you. Okay, all right. All right, and I will disclose also that I have a family member who is employed by Wells Rural Electric, but I will also not abstain. Are there any other questions or discussion on the accounts payable? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the accounts payable are approved. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for input from the public. Anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to item 8.1, which is adjournment of the meeting. So meeting adjourned. Thank you for being with us this evening. Whew.